Superman, the father of all superheroes, a global icon. He's remained on the top of the list of most popular superheroes, even with a questionable movie franchise.
Why did you say that name?
Superman's popularity seems never changing. One thing that does change about Superman, though, is his powers. And oh boy, do they change constantly. From originally only having your typical baseline superhero powers, to going to one of the most powerful beings in all of comics. So today, I'm going to be looking at Superman's powers, even the outright bizarre ones, throughout the ages. Starting in the golden age of comics, in 1939, with the character's introduction in Action Comics #1, Superman was strong, but by no means OP. He really only had enhanced physical capabilities. He had enhanced strength, enhanced speed, faster than a speeding train. His speed was capped at 60 miles an hour. He could jump exactly 1/8 of a mile, and was bulletproof. Pretty standard superhero stuff. He didn't even have the ability to fly, and his powers were not connected to the yellow sun. Although, in the mid-1940s, writers kind of thought that Superman jumping all over the place was a bit silly, so he did get the ability to fly in I think 1943, which is Superman's official first new power. But Superman with even these powers was considered to be too strong, which is why they introduced kryptonite in the late 1940s as a way to depower him. As the golden age came to a close and the silver age of comics began in the mid-1950s, Superman's powers also began to grow. During the Silver Age is when Superman's powers were connected with the yellow sun, and this is when we see a huge expansion of his powers. During the 1950s, almost all of his abilities are vastly increased. He can now run and fly at Flash-level speeds, and with his new flying speed, he was able to travel through space. His strength is greatly increased. He gains his iconic heat vision, freeze breath, X-ray vision, and essentially becomes indestructible. Writers giving the character all these new abilities is a double-edged sword. Yeah, he's more powerful, and fans typically like powerful characters. But at the same time, you're making the character boring. Because how do you challenge a character who can't be hurt and has enough powers to get out of any situation? So to keep the Man of Steel interesting, instead of slowly winding back his powers, writers just started to pile on more and more powers, to the point that it was comedic. I want to start listing his new powers off. Most of them are absolutely ridiculous. He gained the power of hypnotism, which is a way that he keeps his secret identity. He had infinite stamina, including holding his breath indefinitely, which can be used underwater and obviously into space. He gained the ability of super weaving, and that's exactly what it sounds like it is. It's weaving, like knitting, but done at super speeds. The situation called for the ability of super weaving when Superman needed to make Lois a wedding dress on the fly. Pretty handy. Now initially, Superman had the same intelligence of your average guy, but that also changed when they gave him super intelligence, including processing information faster than a supercomputer, although it's a supercomputer from the 1950s and 60s. But his new super intelligence also gave him the ability at being super at mathematics. He was super at ventriloquism, a power very important to all superheroes. He gained the ability of super dancing in order to save a dance club that was rigged with explosives. Superman had to bust a move, and his epic dance moves caused vibrations that eventually disarmed the bombs. He had the ability of shapeshifting, which is used like once and then never seen again. He has memory racing kisses, mostly used on Lois Lane when she figures out his true identity. His eyes really get a boost with microscopic vision. He has super hearing, speaking and understanding all languages. He gains the ability of super speed reading, time travel, due to the fact that he could run fast enough to travel through time. Even his bodily functions become super. His sneezes were powerful enough to destroy solar systems. He gained the ability of telepathy, and of course his most infamous power of the Silver Age, being able to shoot many versions of himself out of his hands, which honestly is just really creepy.
I shall call him Mini-Me.
Which he uses mostly just to go do fun things while the mini Superman does his chores. Pretty rude. Superman became super in basically every aspect of life. And he stayed this powerful until we get to 1985-86 with the comic event Crisis on Infinite Earths. And at this point, DC was a mess. Their continuity was all over the place, and comics weren't even selling for their most popular characters. There's even the story of when Warner Brothers, who owns DC Comics, met with Marvel to see if they'd be interested in buying the rights to all of their characters, and Marvel basically told them, no, your comics suck. But the Crisis event set up DC for a reboot, which resets all of the characters. Superman resets back to his core powers. Fortunately, he lost the power to shoot Mini-Me out of his hands. He wasn't a genius, and he wasn't indestructible. And going into the 1990s, his powers really fluctuated up and down, until we get to the awful story of Electric Superman. So a creature called the Sun Eater came over to Earth, and do you want to take a guess at what Sun Eater did when he got here? Yeah, he ate our sun. Very rude. And since Superman gets his powers from the sun, he essentially becomes powerless. So he tries to get his powers back by charging himself. He overdoes it and turns himself into pure energy. So he no longer has a body at all. He's just energy. And from here, he became Electric Superman, which came with an all-new set of powers. These powers included shape-shifting again. Since he no longer had a body, he could basically morph his energy into whatever he wanted. He could grow in size, became intangible. You could see different energies, not super helpful. His heat vision was replaced with vision bolts, which gave him the ability to shoot electricity out of his eyes. He basically became Magneto from the X-Men, which gave him control over magnetism. He could now absorb energy, shoot lightning bolts from his hands. He was immune to kryptonite, and he could basically teleport. He was able to just zap himself to any place that he was knowledgeable about, and he could travel through the electrical grid, including phone lines. It was also said that he couldn't fly, but then he's immediately seen flying, so comics. Electric Superman only lasted about a year, thankfully, and he's returned to his normal self and powers, which brings us to his most recent new power, at least to my knowledge, called the Super Flare, which is just Johnny Storm's power to go nova. So Superman can now emit a giant fireball that destroys everything within a quarter mile, which is pretty familiar to a panel in Fantastic Four. However, when Superman uses his solar flare power, this depletes all the solar energy stored within him, and he loses all of his powers, essentially becoming human, for 24 hours, until his cells can recharge. Also kind of similar to the Human Torch. But that's the powers of Superman through the ages. Hope you guys liked it. If you did, make sure you hit that like button. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure you subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.